really the backbone of the inventor community. And you've taken extra time to come into Washington, D.C. to some of our events and even come up to Capitol Hill and advocate for inventor rights. So, and what you're doing there with the local club is what it's all about. So it's my pleasure. And it's about 9:15 here in Connecticut, but I'm up all night with you guys, whatever it takes. You know. But thank you. It's so good to be back in Arizona. People are probably wondering what the picture is behind me. That's Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, but we'll come back to that in a minute, why I chose that tonight. But thank you kindly for having me, everyone. And it's a real pleasure to speak to you guys. Again, not the first time and not the last, I hope. So tonight will be really kick back, relaxed. I said to Laura, what I would really love to do is I'd love to tell you not so much about the book I have that's coming out. It took me 2 years to write, but why I wrote it and why I feel it's important to write it in our industry. So hopefully I'll get that message through. But before that, I wanted to tell everybody a little bit about me and how I arrived here and sort of lead up to why I wrote the whole book and the whole package. And I think it's a story to tell that people who don't know it might find it's kind of interesting, and it might be give them more impetus and confidence to go out and do things like I've done to make my way here. But if anyone saw the movie Lawrence of Arabia, you know, the end of the movie comes first with Lawrence dying on a motorcycle, and then they go back. I'm going to start at the beginning here, tell you where I am right now, and then let's go back in time. So right now I do, thank you, Laura, I serve as the president of the United Inventors Association. We're the largest 501c3 nonprofit educational inventor organization in the US with 15 unbelievable board members. You can go on uiausa.org to learn more about us. That's uiausa.org. And we do a lot of things. We do a terrific webinar series. For those of you who go on the site, we have many hour-long videos with incredible guests on that you guys can go into certain subjects like prototyping or made in America or licensing or whatever. And we have a whole library of information. Watch the interviews and exchanges with people to bring out the best in them. We also do newsletters. It's free to join. You can get on our list and get one. We try to do a lot of things with the clubs. We have special events, as Laura knows. We do special things like on the USPTO PTAB, on a new organization. I'm also a member of a couple of other nonprofit groups. I'm on the National Pro Bono Patent Commission, and I'm also on the National Council for the Empowerment of American Innovation, which is dedicated to helping women and minorities succeed in the innovation space. So I do a whole bunch of things which I give back. A lot of this stuff is on the website, which you can see and learn more about. So it's free, again, to be a member of the UIA, and please, you know, it's something that we want to share with everybody. But one of the cool things, Laura, that we do is, as you know, and some people know, we run inventor trade pavilions at inventor trade show, at industry trade shows rather. Our biggest single pavilion is at the National Hardware Show, which is each May in Las Vegas, and it's the largest inventor booth pavilion in the country. We had 175 booths last year. And we also do it at the PGA Golf Show. We originated the one at the Houseware Show. They eventually took it in-house, but it's very much in the same model that we set up, and we're very supportive of what they're doing. We've done things at Toy Fair and other events. And particularly at the Hardware Show, we try to offer education, pitch panels, and great things. The Hardware Show did not run this year, and it was done virtually in the fall in October, and we ran pitch panels virtually. And you'll see in our educational series, we do pitch panels for different products. So try to, you know, if you get a chance, just check us out and you'll see some of the cool things that we try to do. That's my nonprofit, and I donate a lot of time to that and to these National Chamber of Commerce and USPTO organizations. Professionally, though, I run a couple of open innovation programs, open innovation being sort of the art and science of companies looking outside their four walls for new products. I most notably run the open innovation program for Lifetime Brands. They're the largest non-electrics housewares company in the world, with about 40,000 products and about $1 billion in sales and 40 different brand names. I started that program 15 years ago, and it's still running strong. So I'm very proud of that. For many years, I ran the program for Tektronix Industries, Power Tool Group with Ryobi and Rigid, a $2 billion division. And unfortunately, last summer that ended. They had a management shift, and now the person running that division came from Milwaukee, and they don't take outside ideas. So hopefully maybe someday they'll open up and we'll do it again. I also do it for Merchant Media, which is a direct response television company. Right now we have a hit product called True Touch, which are gloves that you put on and you can groom your pet. And we've sold over 4 million of them to date. We've had a lot of other hits. I did a product called Smart Spin with them, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Direct response television is a great area. So I just want to tell you guys that I am an actual open innovation director and expert. I've been running an open innovation program using the Tuttle for years before anyone even heard of it or been using it. It's sort of my mantra and my byline. And I look at about 5,000 products a year, one way or another, come through me, either through submissions, through my portals, which if you go on tuttleinnovation.com, tuttleinnovation.com, you can see and submit any of your products in those arenas through to me, from trade shows, from all types of submissions from around the world, most from the United States, but I do get them from all around the world. Unfortunately, I spend a lot of time saying no to people. Not many advance on a percentage basis. It's difficult. And so part of the reason I wrote my book, Inventor Confidential, is to let people know that the odds are tough and what to look out for. And we'll talk about that a little bit as I go forward. And also to let you know that I am not selling anything to you guys. I'm not asking for anything. I only want to help you. The reason I want to help you is personal. I've had 9 businesses in my life. I've been an entrepreneur, which I'll talk about in a minute. Twice I've put my family at risk. For those who know what that feels like, taking out, second mortgages and betting the ranch on things that weren't successful and having to clean up my mess. I've learned every lesson the hard way. And I'm quite empathetic to your plight as inventors and entrepreneurs. And it's why I do this. And it's why I try to give back. And so I am not a marketer. I am not trying to paint a rosy picture of anything. I'm not telling you you're going to become millionaires. I'm telling you nothing along those lines. What I'm trying to explain to you is that you have this passion and just be very aware of what's going on around you. So that's the end of the movie. So let me go back. Now, let me erase all that and we'll come back. We'll end back there in a little bit. I'll try not to bore you tonight. I'll try to make it fun. So I'm not young any longer. I actually just signed up for Medicare, so that'll give you an idea of my age. But I am still very much young at heart, and I've never matured, and I was always immature as a kid. I was a wild kid, okay? I was a wild kid. And when I was 12 years old, my dad announced that we were moving to Europe, and I moved to Switzerland at 12 and spent the next 5 years there growing up. I was what they call a third culture kid, which some of you may be third culture kids who were not born in America, but came to America, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. As a young person, growing up in another ecosystem or another culture, it's not an easy thing to do, particularly when you don't speak the language and so forth. So I had to adjust and change. That was the first major disruption in my life, and I talk about it a little bit in the book, but it's part of what made me who I am today, I think. And after 4 years, my parents stayed 5 years. My dad announced to me when I was 16 that they were shipping me back to prep school in America because he wasn't sure when they were going to come back. I lived in Zurich, Switzerland, which is a pretty idyllic place, actually. But I went to a small school very close to the other kids. 60% of our school was Americans. The rest were international from all over the world. So I had a very much open view of the world and really opened my mind to seeing things from other views than just from the United States. Although I must tell you that I love the United States, and living there made me love America even more. So I sort of had the best of both worlds. But what happened when I was 16, when they shipped me 4,000 miles back home, put me on a plane when I was very young, I had to re-enter the atmosphere, and it was a difficult process. It took me a couple of years all over again to reacclimate to America and sort of change and lead a disruptive life coming back in. So I went through some major changes. My parents were around. I kind of grew up on my own. I never really moved home again. Quite young, although I did not have a bad relationship with my parents, but ended up going to college on my own, picking my own school. That's another story for another day. But I was a wild kid, you know, there was no parental supervision or anything. So I got myself mixed up in probably, you know, lots of creative stuff. Let's just put it like that. But when I was a junior in college, there was a program to go to Africa. And that was for me. And so I went back over abroad and I went to Kenya and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro behind you when I was 19. And I had another amazing year of being open to now third world countries and learning so much. You know, I lived with a family, a local African family, and just expanded my horizons. And while I was doing that, it opened up my whole mind to all types of possibilities of traveling throughout the world. I came back to America and hitchhiked all around the country. God, I slept on the side of roads. I slept in parks in the center of towns. And I just wanted to meet and learn everything I could about America and from the grassroots up. I worked as a dishwasher. I was a busboy. I painted houses. I started a window washing business. I was a manual laborer, and I was very dedicated to being a hard worker. So I only tell you all these things because I go into a little bit in the book, and all those things that I learned about opening my mind up to other ways of doing things, hard work, being a busboy, bussing the same tables 9 hours in a row at night and sticking to it and doing a good job, were all things that were helpful to me in my career. And somehow I managed to get through college. And the day after I graduated from college, with all this background and free spirit, I went to work in Brooklyn, New York for a department store called Abraham and Straus. And anyone from the New York area will know A&S. It's a very legendary store in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area. I was this kid who lived all over the world, WASP kid from Connecticut, basically, and lived all over the world. And they were high-powered Jewish merchants from New York City. And I remember thinking, I went to interview with them and they said, be your own boss, run your own department. And I said, that's what I want to be. In my own business someday, I'm going to run my own department. And I went down there. There were 105 people in my training program in Brooklyn, New York. This is not Brooklyn today, the poshy Brooklyn. This is Brooklyn in 1977. And A&S was a great store. The main store is the third biggest single retail store in the world. And we had 20 stores around the New York area. We were a sister store to Bloomingdale's. We were owned by Federated Department Stores. And out of 105 of us in my class, only 3 of us or 4 of us, I made buyer. And I wanted to be a buyer. And of all places, I ended up training in the housewares area. I was a Christmas shop merchant, and then I became a cookware buyer and then a small appliance buyer. And I spent a little over 6 years there becoming a professional merchant. And so now I'm going to shift my story, because now I'm going to get serious, okay? I'm going to shift my story from a wild kid growing up, just taking in the world, to getting serious about a dedicated profession and learning a career. And I became very dedicated to becoming a really good buyer. And I became a really good buyer. I started at 21 years old. At 23 years old, I was the youngest buyer in Federated history, I believe. And I was just a kid. Most people were in their 30s. And I had the biggest area in the housewares area. I worked hard. My boss ended up getting promoted. I followed him up. We call that a rabbi in New York. And I ended up becoming a merchant in the cookware and the small electrics area. And I learned very seriously. I worked, around the clock, 24/7, 7 days a week, learning my craft and profession. I lived in New York City and learning how to be a buyer. And buyer is the opposite of sales. It's product selection. It's going out and having a department. In this case, it was cookware and small electrics in that time when the gourmet cookware and electrics field were starting to come into their own, the launch of the Cuisinart food processor, Le Creuset cookware, and all those wonderful things. Williams-Sonoma got started. And so I learned the trade of going out and procuring goods. I learned how to identify bestsellers. I learned how to track them. I learned how to find vendors and negotiate with them. I learned how to source goods from overseas and from America. I learned how to price things and use margin wheels and all the things necessary to run a successful business. And of all things, I had very, very young age, had the largest apartment in the housewares area. It was ridiculous. It was incredibly lucky and incredibly stressful at the same time. But all along the way, I had to turn, and I had an unbelievable boss, by the way, Bob Rockenbach, my mentor and boss, a legendary guy in New York retailing circles, who passed away a couple of years ago, who I call him the Bobby Knight of retailing, because he was one of the tough, like Bobby Knight, the basketball coach. He was usually screaming at me and, threatening to, move me out to a smaller department and everything. But he pushed me, and I became a really, really good merchant. And I met all of the major suppliers in the housewares area around the country. And I met incredible people and buyers around the country, around the world. And I developed very quickly a very good reputation. But I wasn't happy. I learned a craft, but I wanted to have my own business. So I left A&S after 6 years of training, and I went back to Connecticut, and I started my own store called The Complete Kitchen. And The Complete Kitchen was a real big move, because I went from New York City and the hubbub of having a staff and team and being on a fast track to get promoted to starting a 1,500 square foot gourmet store, which is the love of my life, really. And it was very difficult the first year because I went back and I relearned all the lessons that I didn't learn as a New York City buyer. I learned all about what it really takes to find your customer, identify who your customer is, because your survival is now dependent upon it. I learned how to play with real bullets. I raised my own capital, put my own money in that I had saved, and I bought inventory. I paid rent. I had a payroll. I started a cooking school, which became nationally renowned. I started The Complete Kitchen, and it was a Williams-Sonoma sort of high-end gourmet shop. And basically over the next 19 years, I grew it into 6 locations on the houseware side. I had one of the best cooking schools in America. We had Julia Child that's another story. Laura, I'll come back and tell that story another time. She's my hero, all-time greatest hero. We offered about 150 cooking classes a year. I had developed a food business, which we had catering, prepared foods. Paul Newman, the actor, was my partner in that. He partnered. We did a lot of catering for Paul. We grew it out. I also had a kitchen design business, and I had 65 employees. And I did that for almost 19 years. I was running around in all these locations in Southern Connecticut and Westchester County, New York. I also didn't have enough to do like today, so I became president of the local Chamber of Commerce, rebuilt that, and then I chaired my downtown revitalization task force in the town of Darien, Connecticut, where we turned a dilapidated old downtown with cracked sidewalks and terrible parking into a state-of-the-art downtown, which attracted people back from the malls. We were organic early before anyone else bringing people back. It was a cutting edge experiment and how to revive downtowns. And so I really got again involved, and I credit a lot of my youth of meeting different people and growing up internationally and always having new ideas to creating a mindset where everything that everybody wanted to do, I was into. You want to do a cooking school? We'll do a cooking school. We want to fix up the town? We'll fix up the town. Let's do it. Let's just turn this place around and make this place special. And it was amazingly special to me. And I was very, very good. The best thing that I was good at was finding new products. Okay. I always had an eye for new products, even when I was a buyer in New York City. But now I knew all these people at stores, department stores around America, and I knew a lot of the vendors. And so people would reach out to me when they had new products and ask me if they could test them first in our store in Connecticut, because they're about 40 miles outside of New York City. And so we became known as a test store for a lot of things. And I'll give you an example of a couple of products that we tested. You guys might enjoy this story. Has everybody heard of the Nespresso coffee system? We were the first store in America to carry the Nespresso coffee system. The gentleman sent over from Nestle's in Geneva lived in Greenwich, Connecticut. He came in the store one day and we set up a program, and we sold the first 300 machines in America before anyone had ever heard of them. And they supported a commercial unit that we used in our kitchen. And we were the continual feedback. I got invited to Europe to come over and tour with them and do all these things. We did the Donvier ice cream maker. Is anybody old enough to know what the Donvier ice cream maker was? It was the first ice cream maker that had a liner that you put in the freezer that would freeze, and then you put your ice cream mix in it. And we sold like 6,000 of those in the first year of doing business in our little shop, in our little stores. And there was many. I had the Mooley electric mincer, the Varco mincer. We had the stovetop grill. We had the Rima cookie sheets, insulated cookie sheets. I mean, there's so many. We were the first store. So now the story gets really fun. So this is where life gets interesting. So one day we had this reputation sort of nationally for being a company that would launch new products. And a guy walks in the store named Tom Risch, and it changed my life forever. And this was in September of 1997. So it was 23 years ago. And Tom was an inventor. And I had never met an inventor before. I had procured merchandise and bought things, but I had heard of inventors, but I didn't know much about them. And Tom was local. He lived in Weston, Connecticut. And he came in and he showed me, he walked in and he said, "Do you have a minute?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of busy, but yeah, I have a minute." And he shows me this, which is Misto. I don't know how many are familiar with it, but it's a gourmet olive oil sprayer. You can go on my website, tuttleinnovation.com. It was the first all-natural, organic, natural oil sprayer, which allowed you not to have to use PAM, which is, PAM, as you know, is well sold in supermarkets, but it uses a propane gas to fire, which is not good around flames. It uses, PAM uses a low-grade vegetable oil that has preservatives in it. And when you're done with PAM, you throw the container out, and there's enough cans of PAM thrown out every year to circumnavigate the globe. So Tom came to me and he invented this product. He'd figured out the nozzle solution of spraying something with a viscosity of oil, and you could fill it, pump it, and spray it. And I said, "That is one of the coolest effing things I've ever seen, and I'll take 100 of them right now." And Tom said, "Well, I'm just an inventor. I haven't made them yet." And so I said, "Well, what can I do to help?" And I started sort of advising and consulting him behind the scenes. And he was so creative and so innovative. And he made the first 12 by hand. And we marked them at $19.95. And I put them on the cash register. I sold them out in 10 minutes. And I knew right then and there that we had something, every one of our customers that came in. And so the next day, "There you go. Hey, Laura."
I've got 2 of them.
Nice. Well, it's such a great story because the next day he brought down 12 more and we sold those. And then it was 24 and the rest was history. So I said, "Tom, let me help you," because he didn't really have a sales team, but he actually was an engineer. I mean, Tom was not traditionally or classically trained, but he's a brilliant guy. And he built all the tooling in a town about 20 miles from where I was. And he started manufacturing right in Connecticut. And he was doing about 24 a day in the beginning, and we were selling whatever he could sell. And then I had a relationship with a woman named Florence Fabricant, who was a writer at the New York Times in the food section. And I knew her from my old days. And so I sent her a Misto and I said, "Florence, you got to write about this." So she wrote an article about the Misto. And the next day, for the next 3 days, we got hundreds of calls. We sold like 2,000 Mistos. I had to put in 4 more phone lines and hire people around the clock to take orders for this product. And it was just out of control. We were on the map. And then I kind of started helping Tom. And I started getting them into all the gourmet shops in New England, and they were having similar experience. And then I said, "Hey, it's time to go to the big time. Let's go down to Bloomingdale's." My friends at Bloomingdale's were still my friends. So I showed it to them. And it was right before Christmas that year. They said, "We'll take 15,000. So we had to go back and build them. But it was really cool because then Tom built a 10-foot tall Misto. And so we shipped them in like 15,000 Mistos. At this point, we're making like 700 a day. And Tom and I rented a van and we drove the big Misto into Bloomingdale's. We carried it right up the escalator. I mean, can you imagine today, after 9/11, this is 1997, and we did a big display. And then as soon as Bloomingdale saw it, then Macy's wanted it. And anyway, we sold 1.2 million Mistos in the first year we were in business. We made millions of dollars, and it was like a dream come true. I made more money in the first year than I'd made my whole life, you know, and it was the American dream. And it was something that really sold. And, you know, you got a lot of people running around telling stories about their successes, but this was a real live organic success that really sold. And I'll come back to it later. When people tell you their stories, ask them if it actually sold, because when things sell and reorder, that's when the fun starts. And so we went on to, you know, I helped Tom for 4 years, but I decided, I got to speed this story up or we're going to be here all night. I decided that I really wanted to get out of the stores. I had 65 employees. I had a big payroll. I had nothing but stress and trouble. And this selling 1 million units a year, that was for me, you know. So I eventually, over 2 years, broke up all my stores and sold them off individually to people. And I took the money I had, which was helpful, and moving forward. And I made a fair amount of money with Misto. And my run with Misto kind of came to an end. And Tom didn't want to do other products. And we kind of, you know, I had done my job of getting it everywhere in the country. And now they were sort of a little bit more on autopilot. So I took all my money and I pulled it together and I partnered with someone, and I developed a product myself that I got an engineer together with. And this is my sort of dabble into inventing. And it was called Stir Chef. And it was an automatic saucepan stirring device. And it was really cool. It folded up into about the size of a coffee cup. It was brilliant. It had drop down arms that pulled out with spring loaded arms that go down over a pot. It had a paddle that fit in and had really cool, you know, adjustable corners, living hinges. And it had a really powerful battery operated motor that could stir cement, you know. And you put this on the stove and you could stir risotto or soups or beans or anything. Because you know what? I knew from my cooking school days and all my cooking background that the most common command given in cooking is to stir, right? And so you didn't have to stir anymore, right? So it was brilliant. And not only that, here it was even more brilliant. I took all of my experience and I came up with 2 versions, because I figured as soon as this is a big hit, someone's going to knock me off. So I had the Stir Chef, which was the high-end unit, $29.99. It had 2 speeds. It had a gold box and everything. And that was going to be for Williams-Sonoma and all the specialty stores and the better stores. And then the same product, but with 1 speed, we called it Easy Stir. And that came in a goofy red box. And it was $19.99, although it's the same wholesale. And that was going to go to Walmart and everything. And then so everybody knew me from Misto. At this point, I was one of the most popular people in the housewares business, and because I had made a lot of people very wealthy with all the sales of Misto and everything, and I was like walking on water. So I came out with Stir Chef, and we launched it at the 2004 Houseware Show. And it was the #1 new product at the show. And we had Good Morning America and the Today Show came in and did special pieces on it. I was on TV. And we sold 200,000 pieces in the first show, 200,000 pieces. I was seriously, Laura, I was in the bathroom hyperventilating because I was going to be so rich. I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And it was all coming together beautifully. And so what happened is we went out and we made a couple 100,000 of these and got out in front of it, which is a big mistake, because we shipped the first 100,000 out and the darn thing didn't sell. It was a complete disaster. You know, we had gotten tremendous feedback from the buying community. We had gotten wonderful feedback from people who didn't know what they were talking about, but we didn't do enough consumer testing. And what happened was, it turns out that high-end chefs, I learned this later, high-end chefs like to stir themselves because they put the love into the stirring, you know, Martha Stewart and all that. And they like to be right there. And for low end who don't cook a lot, they don't stir. They just stick in the microwave and that's it, you know. So we didn't really have a great marketplace. And I worked so hard to sell these. I went on QVC a dozen times to sell them myself. I sold them to every major store in America. And what happens, folks, and here's where my lessons start. And this is where I part from the marketers out there in our business because I've experienced this firsthand. When stores don't sell the product, they don't pay for it. Okay. So you might have shipped in 20,000 pieces and they owe you, 100 grand. They don't pay it. And now you're out all that money. And so all that money that I made with Misto and other things of selling the stores and rolling it into this big venture, I lost it all. And it put me at huge risk. I could go on for another couple hours about this particular story, but we'll skip over it. You can read about it in the book. But, I put my family at risk, my house and everything else. I was on the balls of my ass. It took me 9 months to clear out the extra inventory that we had. I had to sell them below cost. And it was a very, very painful lesson. So I came off of being this unbelievable young superstar buyer and this unbelievable store owner and the unbelievable Misto guru and all this shit. And I came crashing down to earth, like a homeless, wino and, who doesn't have a roof over their head. I was just crushed. Okay. And I spent every day, and I want to tell you this because I want you to know the real story. I spent every day for 9 months in a warehouse, every day, Saturdays and Sundays, figuring out how to move these out because I wasn't going to let my partners down. 2 of our partners left and were never seen from again. But I had to pay off my debts, put up the money, and I learned a valuable lesson that success is fleeting, okay? And you can be a foot off from it. So you got to be very careful. It's a very painful lesson to learn. And throughout this, it was hard to just keep my shit together, to be honest with you. And this was in 05 and 06. And what was interesting, and here's where the story takes another turn, yet another turn, is I started getting calls from another inventor. At this point, I really didn't want to talk to an inventor, but he kept calling me and telling me that he had this wonderful invention and could I take a look at it? And he heard that I did Misto and everything else. And I was like, yeah, I'll take a look at it. I took a look at it. I said, listen, I can't help you right now. When I get out of this problem, I'll help you. He kept asking me, is there anyone else that can help me get it to market? I said, I don't really know anyone else, but when I'm finished, I'll come back to you. So he waited for me for almost 9 months, which is a miracle. And his product ended up being called Smart Spin. And if you go on my website, you can see that as well. And Smart Spin is a Lazy Susan that has a Lazy Susan base that you stack storage containers on vertically and they're covered. And what was patentable about it was the unit goes on a shelf, but the base slid off and you can continue to spin it around and you can take the containers off vertically. So you could stack all these extra containers. If you go on my website or you look up Smart Spin on Google, you'll see. And I finally started meeting with him. I said, it's a pretty cool idea. I helped him with some of the development issues and some of the challenges that he had. And then I plotted a path to market. This time, explored something that I had a little experience in, which is direct response television. And I partnered with Michael Antino and Merchant Media, and we ended up taking Smart Spin out. And damn, if we didn't sell 7 million units in the first year, and I was off the snide, and I made back all the money I lost and more. And I was so fortunate and so blessed. Yes, I recognize something good. I have a good eye for product, but it all sort of came together very nicely. And that got me back on my feet and put me in really good financial situation. And I decided after that I was never going to do that again. As far as getting, all in on something like that. I've been through it several times now, and plus my own entrepreneurial pursuits. So I actually took a year off and I decided, what am I going to do now? This was in 07. Okay. And I started to look around. I decided that I really liked the inventor world and I liked helping, and like Laura, you and other people that get involved. But so I joined my local club in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I belong to the Connecticut Inventors Association. I started going to some of the inventor shows and stuff, and I got more involved, and I started, trying to learn. And everywhere I went, I started to learn some of the problems that inventors were facing, that they were spending large amounts of money, that people were promising them stuff and selling them on dreams, and people were putting money into things. And it really concerned me. And I want to say this, folks, it concerns me in a way that's very personal to me, because when someone fails and spends a lot of money as an inventor, it brings me back to my failures. And so it makes me shudder, and I don't want to see anyone go through that. So that had a big impact on my life. So I started studying the various business models out there, and all these inventor submission companies and all the inventor marketing companies and people that helped inventors. And I started reading Inventors Digest, and I started doing all these things. And somewhere along the line, I was asked to be on the come on the United Inventors Association board. And so that gave me access to new groups and new people and new stories. But over and over, I kept hearing the same story over and over again. You know, people charge inventors a lot of money and sell them on the dream, and yet the dream is remote. Okay, so about this time in 2008, I was out at the Houseware show, and I still continue to go to shows looking around. I was really kind of deciding what I was going to do, and I was reading, and I fortunately had the luxury that I did not have to run back into another job and sell my soul, you know, so to speak. I could really think about this thing. And while I was at the Houseware show in 2008, I was at the booth of Lifetime Brands, and the chairman of Lifetime Brands, Jeff Siegel, I knew from my Abraham and Strauss days, and I'd stayed in touch with Jeff over the years. And we started a conversation there about Misto and SmartSpin and my successes and everything. And he said, basically, he and Dan Siegel said to me, would you like to come here to Lifetime Brands? They had just read a book and seen a course called Blue Ocean Strategy, which told them to go into new arenas. And would you like to come and start an open innovation program for us? You know, we didn't call it that at the beginning, and I said, I'd be happy to, but I'm not going to work for you because I'm never going to work for anyone again. But if I can do it as an outside contractor. So we came to an agreement on my starting and running, and that was in 2008. So we're I'm actually just going into our 14th year of doing this. And it was quite cutting edge when we started it, okay? I read everything I could on open innovation, back to the early roots of the professor at Berkeley that coined the term and his literature and books on it. I read A.G. Lafley's book from Procter & Gamble on open innovation, how they ran their program. I studied everything I could because I told them I could start this program, but I didn't really know how exactly I was going to do it. Which, by the way, is how I started my window washing and my painting business when I was a kid. Someone asked me, can you paint houses? And I said, sure. And I went to the paint shop and learned how to do it. So I started reading everything I could. I joined clubs. I got very involved. I started immersing myself. And I started, kind of faking it until I got it. And I started reaching out through Inventors Digest, through organizations and stuff. And I started getting people pitching products. And we set up a special platform at Lifetime Brands to handle the program. And we based the program on some essential ingredients. Basically, they agreed to everything that I wanted to do, and I mapped out the program. I brought the program. I suspect if I leave tomorrow, if I stop with them tomorrow, they won't have a program. I mean, I kind of built this. People don't realize I built the program with Dan Siegel, who's the president of the company now, very much in sync. But I got to lay down the platform, and I had various tenets that you'll be able to read about in the book Inventor Confidential, which is number one, we always treat inventors fairly and with courtesy and respect. And that means even when we say no, we do it in a nice, friendly, open way. Unless on the seventh time, the inventor comes to a complete asshole, in which case I have the full right to tell them, get out of here. But that happens very, very, very rarely. And so I find inventors overall great people that understand, and I try to spend extra time, even when it's a no answer, running down the issue and seeing if we can't be helpful in some way. But also that we would pay the highest royalties that we could, that we would be respectful of the inventor, giving them full credit for the invention, and that we would develop this program to extend the program and to be a shining light in the housewares industry as not only the biggest company in the housewares industry for non-electrics, but also the most progressive with our open innovation program. And I'm proud to say that after 14 years of doing that now, that I have probably looked at over 100,000 products just with Lifetime alone. I've done over 100 and some licensing deals, 120 licensing deals with Lifetime. I have, brought in a significant amount of profit for the company, which is why they keep me around. By the way, my whole entire success in life, unlike many of the marketers, has been based on actual success. They wouldn't keep me around if we didn't have financial success with the product. They would get rid of me. And obviously I've sung for my supper with my own products, and both good and bad, but at the end of the day, made far more money. And the amazing thing was they paid me a retainer, and magically and mysteriously, the money for the first time in my life ended up in my bank account without my even knowing it got there. And so it freed me up to be who I am, which is someone that really wants to help people. And I don't have to worry about politics or bullshit or anything, just being myself and helping people. I don't have to focus on a lot of the behind the scenes politics. I don't have to worry about manufacturing per se. I don't have to worry about a lot of issues. I could spend all my time, and they've been very supportive of my efforts on the nonprofit side to go out and educate and help inventors. And the Siegel family and the publicly traded Lifetime Brands company deserves a special shout out for all the support that they've given me and allow me to really pursue, my dream of going beyond just products and licensing and helping the inventor community. But along the way, I was giving a speech on open innovation, which I do regularly at a lot of different conferences. And that's when I met the people from Tektronix Industries. They're in the Power Tool group. They asked me to set up the same program for them that I had with Lifetime, so it was cool. I had a Housewares program, which is about 90% women consumers, to the Power Tool business, which was 90% men. It was a great trade-off. And then for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been working with Michael and Tino on merchant media doing direct response television. And I look at many, many products there and projects. And, like I said, I look at a lot of stuff and I stay on top of it. And my job basically is to work with the companies to open them up to the outside world, but also protect them at the same time so that they feel very comfortable interfacing with you guys. And my job with you guys is to help train and educate you so that you prepare yourself to best present your products for success. And then I also advocate for you and I also counsel you. So it's an interesting marriage. I like to call myself the beach. The beach is the area between the land and the sea. Okay. And so I'm on the beach with the waves crashing, in between the land, trying to bring the two parties together. I have 4 licensing agreements going right now. I spent most of the day on one that's a really cool product for Lifetime. I'm back and forth. I work with all the division presidents. Many of the divisions at Lifetimes are over $100 million divisions. So we're talking about serious people, including their European president and their international folks. I work very closely with all the division presidents on advocating and getting all these things through. I work very closely with the legal team there. I help pull the deals together. I help be the person that persuades both sides to give a little bit. So I play an active role. I am an independent contractor, which is quite valuable. I saw someone post something recently that they thought the people that work for companies made better open innovation people. Well, I will just say this. There's very few dedicated open innovation people. Most of the people that you meet out are not open innovation experts. They're usually in sales, or they might be in legal, or they might be in another area, and they give them sort of products review as an extra assignment. Some of the larger companies have dedicated open innovation people. I am an actual open innovation people. The benefit of my being an outside contractor is invaluable because I don't have to play any bullshit politics with anybody. I don't take orders. I'm not told what to do. It's all great. And I can go to the mat like I did today with the division president of one of the divisions at Lifetime when he questioned something, and I gave him a dressing down, not in a mean way, but tell him how it really is and what he had to be respectful of before we went ahead. So, and I've done that before. I was at a meeting once at TTI with 12 division presidents when some of them started making fun of an invention, and I, in my frustration, banged the table and stood up and I said, if anybody else makes fun of an inventor again, I'm walking out of the meeting and I'm out of here. So I take this all very seriously, and people respect that at the end of the day. It doesn't mean that Lifetime or any other company doesn't have their way of doing business. And it's my job to then translate that back to you, but I'm a middle person. But what I've learned along the way gets me to what, I'll talk about the book and then any questions that you have. So the reason I wrote the book, folks, and now that you know a little bit more about me and how I got into this and my unusual thing, is that as I looked around me, I found that I'm really one of the very few people in this industry that's 110% dedicated to the inventor community and doesn't take money for it. Okay. And what I mean by that is there are some marketers running around saying they give out free information. And, you know, if you want to buy their book or whatever, but their core business model is selling you coaching services. You can check out the prices for yourself and determine whether you want to do that for yourself. But there's an expense involved in that. And that's what it's all, everything else is a funnel into that. That's fine. That's their business model. That's who they are. And that's fine. That's fine. Just don't present yourself as a nonprofit or as a, you know, that you're doing stuff given away for free. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Say who you are, and that's fine. That you're allowed to be whoever you want. You guys have to make your own decisions. I will help anybody or anybody. There's no charge. Okay. I am compensated by the companies that I help. I have a relationship with each one of them that will not affect the royalty that you're paid, that I get paid out of a different profit center. And I know a lot about how to set it up and do that. And the United Inventors Association, I donate a lot of money to it, and I raise a lot of money to it every year to advocate. So if you reach out to me, and my email, by the way, is www.tuttle@yahoo.com. That's Tuttle@yahoo.com. Or you go on my website, it's tuttleinnovation.com. I will always get back to you. I may take me a couple of days. You may not always get the answer you want, but I will give you the straight up story. And so as a result, and this is why it's important, whether people charge you or they don't charge you, everybody says, I'm not the popular guy in the room, okay? I'm not the popular one. I'm not selling you on something, okay? Or trying to, you know, get cash flow is not my interest. It's not my model. I mean, it is, you know, everybody has to, you know, make money. I get that, but I don't have to be conservative. But I don't have to sell you on anything at the end of the day. And believe me, invention marketers who are out there selling various services, they know you guys. They know inventors. They know there's X number of them out there. They know how to reach you through social media. They know what stories to tell. They know what fronts to put up. And they know how to funnel you into people that then convert you into sales. And there's a lot of these companies, okay? There's not just one. Some of them are into coaching. Some of them are more submission oriented. Some of them are, there's a variety of them in any event. You probably know most of who they are, but you'll have to decide. And here's what I say to you, okay? Here's what I say to you. If you're going to partake in what they're selling, and a lot of you will come in as naive, new and young inventors, and you'll see, my God, you know, this is the path for me. I have a great idea. There was a recent poll in Inventors Digest that I actually quote in my book. 70% of all the inventors they polled thought they were going to become millionaires from their patents. Okay. The truth of the matter is that it's well under 1% are going to become millionaires. Okay. A fraction of that. And people also continually boast about licensing agreements. Again, it's a small percentage, okay, of people that get licensing agreements that pursue these paths, okay? What is it, 3%? I've heard that quoted. Certainly not more than 5%, I promise you that, I promise you that, okay? All right, and the great thing about this is these marketers run around, this, you know, Joe Blow or Susie Q signed a licensing deal, and then we never hear about it again. We don't know the terms of the licensing deal. We don't know whether there was ever success. I've signed lots of licensing deals, and that's fine and that's great. And maybe you get a small advance, but there's never any sales generated from it. And so at the end of the day, there's no money made. We don't see follow-ups a lot of times. And those people are few and far between. So here's what I'm trying to say to you. Here's what I'm trying to say to you, that your resources, if they're limited, look, if you've got plenty of money, then go for it. You know? But if your resources are limited, you have to decide how you're going to spend that money to best advance what you're trying to accomplish, okay? And I'm not here to tell you which way you should spend it. I'm only here to tell you to be aware of what's going on around you. And that's when I come to my book, okay? And my book is set up this way. And by the way, it was supposed to be out by now, okay? And because of COVID, it got moved back. So I apologize to everybody on that. It took me close to 2 years to write it. And by the way, let me give a shout out to Jeff Mangus for helping me with the book. Jeff is a writer, but he's also an inventor. And anybody who knows Jeff knows he's an awesome dude who's a true inventor from West Virginia. And Jeff and I have been friends for a long time. And he's been after me for years to write the book, God, for as long as I can remember. And I, quite frankly, didn't have time to write the book. And he said, well, I'll help you with it, organize it and everything else. And I wrote every word and every issue, but Jeff was so ridiculously helpful laying it out, first drafting it. He put in so much time and effort in it. Jeff Mangus is a dear friend of mine and the salt of the earth. And I will just say that I appreciate everything that he's done and his friendship. And other people have written books, and sometimes they use ghostwriters and they don't mention the ghostwriter. I put Jeff Mangus proudly on the cover, and you can read about it, Jeff, when you go on Amazon, and he deserves every bit of credit that coming his way. But having said that, I divided the book into two parts. And the first half of the book is dedicated to product development. And let me just tell you, I'm going to tell you maybe things differently than other people tell you. In general, I'm speaking generally now, it's not an easy path to licensing, okay? It's not simple and it's not easy, okay? And what I'm trying to tell you is that I've done, of the 120 licensing agreements, for instance, that I've done with Lifetime Brands, you know how many of them have been done with an idea? 0, okay? They don't even get to first base, okay? There was a seminar in the spring on licensing with Lifetime Brand, and it generated about 90 to 95 leads, and not one of them advanced. The reason is many of the products weren't prototyped. Many of them had not pursued intellectual property. Most of them had not been developed. Most of them had not been thought out. It's fine to put together a sell sheet and sort of float an idea out there, but what's coming right behind it, if you send it to someone like me, is have you built a prototype? Does it function? Have you worked out the kinks in it? I need to know this. I've been down this road too many times with people to find out that the product can't be built down the road. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't industries that ideas are a little bit easier to advance. Most notably, direct response television is a little easier. And the toy industry is slightly easier, I'd say. But I will tell you, in my industry, in housewares and in power tools, and in many of the other things that I've dealt with over the years, from toys to, not so much toys, but pet products to medical devices and everything, that building prototypes and filing intellectual property is critical stuff because it elevates you. Now, remember, my book is written from my standpoint. I'm not a marketer, and I'm not telling it from the inventor standpoint. I'm talking about as someone who runs open innovation programs that's reviewing you. I'm like the director of admissions at Harvard, okay? I'm looking at you and deciding whether you're going to be a student here. And by the way, I don't know if it's a mystery to anybody, but you know, I work with the people at Lifetime and things I like, and it's very careful. But if I see something that's not right, or you know, I have full authority to move on from it. So I'm an important part of the process. I can't, Lifetime Brand cannot handle looking at 5,000 products a year. So when people come in prepared with prototypes or with IP, even if it's a PPA, it's impressive to me, and it shows that you have a foot in the game, and it's very important. And that leads to a conversation between you and me, which gets to the next spot, which is if I like your product and I reach back out to you, I am very interested in having a meaningful, productive conversation with you on how you arrived at what you got to and what you're doing. I'm happy to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but I want to learn more about you. And that's usually an indication when I call you back or I get in touch with you that there's interest from the company or from me in your product. And that's an important step. But the conversation needs to focus on critical things. And if you have not, if you've just sent me a sort of a sell sheet with a product that doesn't exist, you know, and you're waiting to then determine whether you should sink more money in it, and I'm not necessarily against that, but if I'm going to tell you, hey, if you want to go to the next step, you got to build one. And a lot of times what happens is people don't put enough energy or thought or resources into building the prototype, because why? They've already spent the money with coaches or with other things. You know, I found this. I'm just telling you, folks, what I've learned. And if anybody wants to get in public with me and have this discussion, I'm telling you, I know this stuff inside out. Okay, I'm not trying to be a know-it-all, but I know everything there is about this. And I'm just telling you that what I try to do is give good feedback, because in the process of now developing your product and putting your money and resources into that, okay, is you learn a lot about what makes that product function. And that information is critical for the companies out there that want to license your product. They want to know that. If not in the beginning, they want to know it down the road. They want to know if it functions, if it works. And this is an important part. And by going through that process and following the intellectual property part with patents and filing properly and all, at the very least, you will get a much higher royalty, because there's a range of royalties that are applied. So becoming a real inventor, okay, that involves vetting the marketplace, that involves prototyping, that involves product development, that involves pursuing IP. All these things are critical things that I go through in the book. That's way more than just an idea and sending in a collection of ideas. By the way, if somebody sends me, and I've had this happen many times, like 30 ideas, I don't even know what to do with that, okay? It's just overwhelming. I can't do that. You have to find something that you're passionate about and something that you've vetted. And the great inventors that I've worked with over the years, the Tom Rishes, the Josh Malones, they all do it the same way. They put in the extra effort and the time and effort into it. Now, doesn't mean to be stupid with your money. You've got to watch your shekels. You got to be very careful. I made the mistake. I almost went broke. I get that. So you have to do it in sequence, but you have to be concerned with the actual development of that product. And I even get into a section in the book where I talk about both Scamper and Triz, okay? I don't know how many people have heard Scamper or Triz, but they're engineering terms. They're acronyms for product development and high-level engineering that comes from very, very smart people that have put together a protocol to follow when you're developing new products and ideas. And I think it's chapter 5 of my book goes into that in depth. And for that chapter alone, it's worth reading the book. And that's collected from heads of product development companies, like at Lifetime Brands. The head of product development has 70 people working for him and does this stuff every day. And I interviewed him for hours on this stuff. And I did all the research in the book and so forth. So I get into some pretty sophisticated stuff, which is the other end. My book is the opposite of simple. My book is the serious nature of what it will take to really be successful. So I come at it from maybe a totally different standpoint, because I know from the inside of the companies. And I talk about a lot about the boardrooms. I talk a lot about what a good licensing deal looks like, what to ask for, what the differences are, how to go about doing it. And then I finished the first half with a section on going to market directly, because I have experience with that also. And I have a chapter called the 30 Steps of Going to Market Directly. So today it's even easier going to market and directly than it has been in the past. Today with Amazon, with online, the reach of online, with social media, a lot of people are out there starting companies on their own and going directly, which you can do. And it's pretty cool, actually. So I talk a lot about that, but it's also fairly complicated, everything from tooling all the way through to fulfillment and collecting the money and the 27 steps in between. So I've made every mistake 5 times. And so that's sort of a helpful chapter. And then I go in to the, yeah, Laura, yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Do you mind me?
No, not at all. I'm sorry. I deserve to be interrupted after that.
No, I just wanted to back up a little bit, because some of the things that you're talking about are things that we help guide inventors with, in our group. And when you talk about prototypes, we encourage people to do that, sell sheets, any videos that they may be able to shoot. But also, one of the things that we think is important before they approach a person like you, or another potential licensee, is to do their homework on the target market and on like the cost of manufacturing, so they can become a little bit more of an expert. How important do you think that is for them to spend that time doing that homework?
Very, very, very important. And I do also talk about that in the book. I have a protocol and a questionnaire that I ask people questions when they submit products. And Laura, those are on the questionnaire. And when I follow up, I like to find out more. Now, I try not to hold it against the inventor if they don't know enough about cost of goods, because sometimes that takes a little bit extra expertise. So sometimes I can run that stuff down or be helpful in running that down, because cost of goods is critically important. Because I've had many products that looked wonderful, but we could not manufacture them for the right price, okay? I know that one of the marketers out there has a product that he's boasted about being very successful. He made a lot of money. It never had marketplace success because the product cost 10 times, what it should have, to manufacture, and it didn't get out there. And so I don't consider that a successful product. He might have made a little bit of money selling the patents, but I don't consider that a successful product. To have an organic, successful product that works is one that gets reordered and that you sell. If you're going to license, sell hundreds of thousands of units, if not millions. So vetting the marketplace is very important, although it's a little bit tricky. You can do some of your own marketplace research. You can do it online. You can do it through SurveyMonkey. You can go around, when COVID is over, to stores and ask salespeople and get a lot of feedback from people. Sometimes you get passionate about a product, and it's kind of difficult to really project out specific numbers of how it's going to do. In fact, it's almost impossible. But what you can do is determine with feedback if the category is a big enough category that has enough consumer demand or interest that would with success, or enough people that are solving problems for, generate big numbers. So that's why a lot of times products that have niche markets, aren't necessarily right for licensing. For instance, my Stir Chef, it turns out we couldn't sell it. The only category that we sold it was senior citizens and disabled folks, because it helped them stir. And we actually had we sold some units in that category. The problem is there's not enough senior citizens and disabled people to sell millions of units. And so we were talking about tens of thousands instead of millions of units. So you need to pursue categories and vet the marketplace, not just with specific numbers, but if it's a big enough idea with enough consumer interest. So sometimes your market research will not just be for sales by unit, but will also be about the category in general. And that stuff's very helpful. Now, when an inventor comes to me and says, hey, listen, there's 130 million homes in America, and if 1% of them use it and blah, 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 blah. That stuff, usually goes over my head because a lot of times those numbers are very speculative. But if an inventor comes in and says, look, I've been around in the marketplace and I've studied Amazon and I've studied the retailers, there's nothing like it. These are the features that are on it, and this is the category. That is incredibly impressive for me. And by the way, Laura, it's a great question, because the more you do like that to impress someone like me on my side, the better off you are. We're going to have a great conversation, and we're going to pursue other things. And by the way, maybe it's not just this product, maybe it's other products you have down the road. So that's very important. Studying the marketplace is critically important. Price point. Here's a little known fact for you guys that you want to jot down. It's a fact that you sell two-thirds, 67% less units at $29.99 than you do at $19.99. So if you have a product that you would put out at $19.99, it would sell 1 million units. If you move it up to $29.99, it will only sell 333,000. Now that's important when you start doing your projections and your margin projections to see where you want to be with the product and so forth. The issue being that price point matters, and lower to a certain extent is going to drive your sales. And you have to look at that point on the graph where it makes sense. And so when you're doing licensing agreements with companies, these are the things that you look at and you talk about. But in the beginning, even before you get there, and I just spent a couple of months on an unbelievable product that Lifetime's going to launch in the spring that I'm so excited about. But I spent months behind the scene, hooking up the division people, the product development people with the inventor, getting all the answers structurally, looking at prototypes, functioning units, checking IP, worldwide PCTs. All these things are standard things that most companies go through and most companies feel important. So it just enhances your odds tremendously. Be careful, of course, but it enhances your odds. So the second half of the book, I go into more inventors. Keep your head on a swivel, okay? because there's a lot going on out there. And again, I'm not the most popular guy in the world, and I don't expect to win a popularity contest. But what I do hope to do is to share with people things that they need to give thought on. Number one, I talk a little bit about marketing, inventor marketing companies, and what to look for. And here's something that you should really take seriously. No matter if you pay someone to help you, whether it's an individual coach, or if it's a marketing company, or it's a marketing factory with hundreds of 1,000 inventors going, or it's one of the invention submissions, any of them, you need to do your research on how successful they've been. And you need to ask the question. And we're going to get into this, a lot in the book. You need to ask the question, how many people have come through your program? What are the numbers? What have they paid? What percentage have had success? What percentage have made back more than the fees they paid you? What are the numbers? Okay. Not we signed a few licensing agreements this year, blah, blah, blah. That means absolutely nothing. How many people have generated royalties money? You should know, you should ask that question. If you can't get a straight answer on that, okay, then that should be a red flag, folks. Okay. And so I talk a little bit about that. I talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of Washington, D.C. And Laura, you know that world, and what's going on with patent laws and the American Inventors Act of 2012, which helped dilute the patent system a little bit. And I'll let Josh Malone and my friends in US Inventor, who were defending, inventor rights, talk more passionately about that. But, I've been on the front lines of that. And unfortunately, the big tech companies, starting with Google and some of the others, have a different view of what intellectual property and patents should be like. And they have a tremendous amount of clout, and they have a lot of money, and they have a lot of lobbyists, and they have a lot of direct connections to Congress and the Senate. And they were able to name their own patent office director for a few years there. And they were able to do various things. And they also run CES and the electronics industry. And so they, and in the software industry, have a different view than inventors. We're on polar opposites on what we feel the value of patents are. So I talk a lot about that and what we need to do to stay vigilant as inventors and make sure that our voices are heard. Talk about intellectual property issues, talk about pro bono patents, talk about, way people can access that don't have the resources and so forth, and some of the charitable things. And basically try to alert people, also how to raise money without going to the bank through crowdfunding. Talk a lot about that, and some people can help you there. And then I also talk a lot about industry trade shows. Now, I've read about articles, people say you shouldn't go to trade shows and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm telling you that there's nothing better than going to a trade show. Anybody want to get up and discuss it with me? Have at it. I've been to hundreds of trade shows all around the world, okay? It is the quickest, easiest way to learn a great deal about the industry you're trying to exploit. Now, if you're just sort of collecting ideas all over the place, maybe it's not for you. But if you've decided that you're inventing a certain specific product in the hardware space, or in the houseware space, or in the golf space, or you owe it to yourself. Now, I know it's COVID, so it's a bit disruptive, but there's a vaccine that was just approved in England today, and we're going to approve it in 2 weeks. And 6 to 9 months, the world's going to turn around again. So you got to start looking ahead now, okay? But a trade show is a great place to walk the show, find out more about the industry that you want to exploit, walk into booths, talk to managers of companies to see if they take open innovation products, to walk the inventor pavilions, to listen into the educational forums, to do pitch panels, to participate in all these ways that I talk extensively about in the book. I am the hugest believer in trade shows. And for folks that think that, we're afraid to go to them or showing anything, obviously you have to, protect yourself, and there's a certain protocol to doing it, but it is the most valuable way to quickly learn more. And I have never met anyone that's taken a booth at the trade show, and I've worked with over 1,000 people now over the years of running these trade shows, who hasn't been wonderfully impressed and thankful and come up later with even if they don't move ahead, they've learned a lot about, their product and what viability it has in the marketplace and whether they can launch it. So I talk about all these things. And then, Laura, I get into a very personal chapter, which I call Siam, which is an acronym SIAM, and it stands for Stop, Identify, Address, and Move On. And you can read the chapter about that, but it's a lot about failure, and it's a lot about anxiety, and it's a lot about stress, and it's a lot about all the things that we go through in life and that we've all been through in our careers, and how to go through failure like I've been through colossal failure and not completely lose it and rebuild yourself. Stop, identify what's going on around you, come up with a game plan, and move on. So I'll leave it at that. I'm very proud of that chapter. It's a very personal chapter. By the way, my publisher is HarperCollins, the second biggest book company in the world. I'm so thrilled that they're supported. They're going to be supporting the whole book, publicity-wise and everything. They wanted me to originally take it out. I said I wouldn't take the book. I wouldn't take it out. I said no book. But anyway, it's a lesson for inventors, and it might hit a lot of you personally. And just like the chapter on Scamper and Triz, it's completely different than anything maybe you've ever seen before. I do talk a lot about direct response television, and then I get into really where we are in COVID. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but patent filings have actually been down during COVID. I know that the general talk in the street is there's more innovation going on, blah, 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 blah. I will tell you right now that the successful companies that are doing well, the Home Depots of the world, whose business is up, Lifetime Brands, a lot of the housewares, hardware companies, they're struggling just to find inventory of products that are already in their lines. It's been a more difficult time for me over the last 6 months to advance projects in a lot of ways because they're so consumed with just, all they're trying to do is get, Home Depot's running about 25% less inventory than they usually have at this time of the year. So they're just looking for anything they can get their hands on. But here's this here, and filings have been down for I think a whole bunch of reasons, but here's what I do think is happening. People are taking stock, and hopefully all of you guys have been taking stock during this downtime and not just hanging out. I know I have. I've reassessed my business model. I'm going to move ahead and do new things going down the road. I know that when we come out of this, it's going to come out quickly, and the world's going to change on a dime. And suddenly there's going to be hope, and there's going to be a future, and people are going to start hiring again, and people are going to start opening up. So get ready for that, because my suspicion is that 10,000 vaccines are just being shipped to England because they're the first country to approve it. You'll see first responders and doctors be vaccinated first here in America. I was talking to someone at Upstate Medical Center in Syracuse, New York the other night, who's a doctor, who told me very much the same, that the vaccines have been testing extremely well, and the side effects are minimal, and the doctor community is very thrilled with it. These things are going to roll out quickly, and I would say that probably over the next 6 months, you're going to see everybody get vaccinated at least once in this country. So get ready for what's coming, folks, because I think they have been down, but I think things are going to pick up at a rapid pace, and you want to get out in front of that wave. And my last chapter is on the value of organic innovation. And I give everybody something to do. I give the Supreme Court something to do. I give the president, I give Congress, I give you guys, the inventors, I give open innovation directors. You'll have to read it. Everybody gets something to do to make innovation better, because if we don't get back to grassroots innovation and we stifle it, we're going to lose the next Google and Amazon and all these things that started themselves with grassroots innovation. And I'm especially older in life, you know, looking back at what we can give back to others to recycle and re-benefit others. So anyway, thanks for listening. I know that went on way too long. Thanks for the therapy. I just want to tell you about me and why I wrote the book. So any questions?
Yeah, Warren, I was kind of going through, there's a lot of chat, going on. A lot of people are saying they love this, and, they're getting very good information from you, and to thank you for sharing everything, with them. One of the questions that I did see, and I'm sorry, I can't find it in the chat, but it was about virtual trade shows that are kind of going on now. What do you think about that?
Well, like everything, Laura, virtual is the second best thing. So if you can't be there, it's better than nothing. And so like Reed Expo are the folks that run the hardware show, and they put a lot of time and resources into doing a virtual 3-day show in October. We were very supportive of that, and it was fine. We did pitch panels for about 15 to 20 inventors, and we did stuff with the USPTO and IP and things, but it's not like being there, okay? And the sooner we can get back there now, I'm just telling you guys that I already have my plane ticket paid for and my room in Vegas from last year. I moved it forward, and I think the hardware show is around May 7th or 8th, and I'm planning on being in Vegas. And by God, I hope there's a show this year. So
All right.
we'll see.
We have a question from Thais, who's one of our members. And Thais, you have unmuted. Could you go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Warren. Thank you so much. Great talk. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And I can tell everybody here, I've had firsthand experience with Warren, and he is indeed the real deal. And I really feel like we're lucky to have you here.
And so are you. And so are you, by the way. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I have I'm all ready for the trade show too. I've got my ticket. I've got my room.
Oh, good.
I actually, that was when we met in person, was there at the National Hardware Show, and I hope to see everybody in that space there. Question is, you had said that you, in your experience, about 1% really hit that million mark.
Under a fraction of 1%.
A fraction of 1%. So what do you, in your experience, do those people do? What are the 3 top characteristics, would you say, of those people?
Great question. And while I'm formulating the answer, I'm going to say to everybody, go on my I want you to watch 2 interviews.
Yeah.
That are both on. So I have a website called tuttleinnovation.com.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I also have a website called Inventor Confidential, so you can read about the book. So.
I got it. I by the way, I pre-ordered.
Oh, thank you so much. But tuttleinnovation.com. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a library of interviews that I've done. Mm-hmm. The 2 that you should watch, the 2 best interviews of all time, are with Tom Risch, who invented Misto, and with Josh Malone, who invented a bunch of balloons. And both epitomize to me the beauty of an innovation and inventors. They both are very similar people. Josh is classically trained with a master's in engineering. Tom is not, but thinks the same way. And so it doesn't mean you need a degree to be an engineer necessarily. And both of these people will tell you that they spent a great deal of time and energy vetting their product, that their product was not the first one that was a success. Thomas had 2 successes out of about 16 products that he pursued. Josh had 7 other products before he came to Bunch of Balloons. So they learned a lot by testing. So that's why you do have to be careful with your shekels and your money and follow your blocking. But what made them particularly, 3 things that made them, first of all, was their analytic ability to determine that they were solving a problem and that the problem was big enough for enough people. So that goes a little bit back to Laura's question before about market size. And so they both, in Tom's case, he did a lot of research on PAM, found out that PAM was selling 100 million bottles a year and so forth, and that there was a market for it, and he did a lot of other research. And Josh did similar research in the toy industry. Number 2, they were very, very serious about prototyping and working out the kinks. Tom spent over a year working out the kinks in Misto, and he used to tell me all the time, every night he would go to bed with a handful of challenges, and he'd wake up in the morning, he'd list them, he'd wake up, he'd spend all day solving them, and then he'd go to bed with another list. And he said he did this day after day after day till he solved things. And he also continually went out and vetted the marketplace and looked at things to see what he came and asked questions of people that were knowledgeable. And he put this all back into building a prototype, and the prototype functioned. And so that's really, really important, because it's one of the first questions, especially if you're going to license, but even if you're going to move ahead to manufacturing. And I'd say the third thing is they were organically, and I'm going to try to describe this properly, but they were organically open to allowing the product to get out there and succeed. And then they followed the success of it. So if it hadn't succeeded, they would have moved on to the next product. But once it was organically working, they dropped everything else they were doing and they went all in on it. For Josh, that experience came for when he put it on Kickstarter and they raised $1 million. And then he knew he was onto something, and he dropped everything else he's doing. And if you know Josh, you know he's a focused guy. Same with Tom. He was doing other things, but once he met me and we started to visualize the future, he went all in on it. And so I think that ability to organically see what develops, and then if there's a lead, follow up, but are things that, but they were highly professional. I wouldn't say workaholics, because I spent a lot of time with Tom and we had a lot of fun too, going to trade shows and doing a lot of things and running around, but we worked extraordinarily hard. And it was a labor of love, and there was no shortcuts. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. There's just shortcuts just reduce what are already slim odds.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Warren, we have a lot of comments in our chat.
Sure.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, awesome experience. Thank you for sharing. Oh gosh, all kinds of comments of people just really enjoying your story and plan to order your book. We do have another question that I really want to ask, and it's actually from one of our members, Kalpana. And I will tell you, I'm going to set this up for you. The reason why, because Kalpana is one of our newer members, but this girl is determined and she does her homework.
Great.
So, and yes, she's incredibly impressive. And she wants to ask you, what's the best way to find out manufacturing costs?
Well,
dive into that.
Yeah, there's, and she can email me separately too at www.tuttle@yahoo.com. You can do some of this on your own. You can do some of it online. You can reach out. Obviously, there's places like Alibaba now that you can try to source through. There are also professionals that focus on manufacturing as well, that I could send her a couple of leads if she wanted to track that down. But you can also do it off the cost of materials. Sometimes you may not know exactly what it costs to assemble, but if you could get a ballpark figure by weights and materials, you can at least get a ballpark. I don't necessarily need to know that a product costs, $3.72 to manufacture. I just got to know that it's, around $5, typically, in a lot of industries, they use a 5 times rule, 5 times the cost of production and the associated costs with delivering that product. Okay. So 5 times that cost, that landed cost, should we say, sets the retail. So if it's a $20 retail, you want to manufacture for around $4. So I like to find out generally, is it a $4 or $5 cost, which would put it at about a $19.99 retail, or is it, we're talking $7 or $8, which is going to put it up to $39.99. So you want to be in general spheres, and you can do some of that off of materials, and we talk about that in the book as well. How to sort of do that. So there's a variety of ways to pursue that. You don't have to be perfect, but you want to be proximate. And you also want to have an idea in your mind by vetting the marketplace of where any nearby competition would be and where you think this price point should be. Remember, one thing that big companies bring to bear is usually driving that manufacturing price down. So if you get a price of like $7, it's quite possible the Lifetime can hit a $4 cost with that, with volume and so forth. So just, it's better to be honest up front, let people know what you've learned, but that's probably the best place to start.
That's great.
By the way, anyone, she's welcome. She's thorough and is listening. Email me and I'll try to be helpful. So thank you.
Okay, and then we have another question. Warren, do you only look at housewares category in case they have a question?
So I also do direct response television. So I look at a lot of DRTV products. DRTV are those late night infomercials. And usually in that area, we also look at exercise. We look at pet products. We look at hardware. We look at, a variety of other fields. And like I said, for many years, I did hardware and power tools. I am working on other venues in that arena, so stay tuned. But it was after 8 years, it was kind of abrupt. And I'm also I'm also doing some other consulting. So stay tuned. I'm starting to shift my model a little bit as I grow up and finally determine what it is I want to do. So stay tuned.
One more question here. Has DRTV moved to YouTube?
Well, yeah. So DRTV is a good question overall. It's a different category than it used to be 20 years ago. There are all types of outlets for direct response television companies and manufacturers to get their goods out. YouTube is one, but there's a lot of social media stuff going on there on platforms. Sometimes there's just enough TV run these days that you don't even notice it that much, but it's supporting in-store retail sales. There's a whole bunch of different venues that the industry has changed tremendously. So it's not just how many you sell on television anymore. And that marketplace continues to evolve. So they're still looking for good content and good products. But sometimes today, I read about successful products that are TV products that I've never even seen or heard of on TV, which never used to happen in the past. But that's how they do get out there in other unusual ways today. So the answer is yes and far more to that.
Okay, great. We have just a couple of related questions. People are kind of interested in if you've ever dealt with industrial products. And then another follow-up question is, what about educational products or educational toys?
Yeah. So look, there's a commercial arena in the housewares area that's entirely different than consumer, and I have spent time in that area. So in other words, if you have a product that might work in a commercial kitchen, and a restaurant chain like Thank God It's Fridays wants to order 10,000 of them, there is a marketplace there. They're usually surfaced by commercial distributors. It's its own category. They have their own trade shows. A lot of times you could license a product a lifetime and completely, and by the way, this is something I talk about a lot in the book, you can have a completely different licensing agreement on the commercial side, because your technology might be applicable on both. So sometimes you can split those up. As far as really big commercial outlets, no, I sometimes have people send me things like new pizza boxes. Every pizza delivery in the country should have one of their boxes. It's really not an arena that I have a lot of expertise in, and I try to stay in my lane, Laura. I have so much going on with what I do that I absolutely try not to give my advice on things that I'm not an expert at. I can give general talks about, like what I'm doing tonight, about the best way to approach people. But if you're in that space, you're going to want to follow the same things that I lay out in my book. Is you're going to want to do your research and identify who the biggest companies are in the industry that you want to exploit. So if you've just designed the latest, greatest pizza box, then you got to find out who the hell is selling all those pizza boxes, because there's somebody out there that's making a lot of money doing it. And if you can track that down, then connect with them and see if you can see if they're open to outside ideas. If they're not, move on to the next one. I recently had a dentist that brought a product to me, and I helped them quite a bit until the point where I said, I don't know anything about dentistry. And he went on and got someone else to help them, and they just licensed it. They got like $150,000 business. So I'm kind of kicking myself. But anyway, having said that, I don't know anything about the dental business. So I was really, I don't like to BS people like that. So I'm very happy for him, and then he went on to do it. But you need to sort of identify, and if someone steps forth and says they're an expert, or you need to like get a pizza box expert, then get someone who's genuine, who's had success. Or if they've had no success, at least admit it and say, I've never had any success, but I sure would love to help you get in this, because we all have to get started somewhere. And, make sure that they're not, taking money from you up front and so forth. And, we've all been through that experience, on both the TV side. You put up 30 grand and we'll shoot some commercials and we'll test it and blah, blah, blah. And, it goes nowhere and you're out of 30 grand. So just be careful about spending money. But if you can find an expert, try to find somebody who's had some success in the past and can tell you what they've been up to and show you what they've done. Experience is important, and honesty and integrity is very important in this business. The real story, not the marketing story, the real story. And it's up to you. And after you read the book, you'll find out some of the questions to ask, so you can find put people through their real paces and find out what the real story is.
Very good. Thank you, Lauren. There's so many more comments and everything. And I will tell you, Lauren, you're being described as a rock star. So yeah, very, very cool, huh?
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Guitar.
there's quite a few other questions, but we do need to wrap it up tonight. We've had almost 60 people on. So with that many people, we just can't get to all the questions in the time that we have. But one of the things, I'm going to go back real quick here. Hopefully we will be able to see everybody in just a second. And maybe not. I don't know. Let's see. Everybody, can everybody see everybody else right now? Can you see it? Okay. All right. I would like to ask everybody before we close tonight to go up to the right-hand corner of your own screen, your own little square, and unmute yourself. Go on the little dot, and unmute yourself so that everybody's microphone is open. And we do this at the close of all of our meetings, especially with our keynote speaker at such a status as Warren Tuttle. So the reason why I'm having everybody unmute is to put your hands together and let's give them applause.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, Warren.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you.